This podcast is brought to you by LiveProducersOnline.com, a community of Ableton Live users connecting you to the pros to learn today's music production. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ableton Music Producer Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Giffen, and today is a unique podcast. It's extra special. I am with our guest, Graham Plant. He is on the sales and partnerships team for SUBPAC. And if you don't know who SUBPAC is, it is a company that creates audio hardware and software solutions for a unique bass and low frequency experience, which we're going to talk more about that in a second. I am a personal advocate of SUBPAC. I love the products the company creates. I own a SUBPAC S2 myself, which I love and use all the time in my studio. SUBPAC, it's a great company. It's used by thousands of professional producers, engineers, live performing artists, musicians around the world. Just to name drop a few, we could talk about Timbaland or Richie Houghton, Flying Lotus, Mike Dean, who produced for Kanye, Glitch Mob. We can go on all day talking about artists. But Graham, thanks for joining us today, man. I'm glad you're here.
Dan, thanks for having me. Really excited about it. Looking forward to, diving in deep and letting everyone know about SUBPAC. And yeah.
For sure, man. Well, like I said, I've been using the products you guys create for a little while, probably about a year and a half now. There was an email that came out that I was subscribing to the SUBPAC newsletter, and I saw a special for, I think it was like a Black Friday deal, and I was like, yes, this is my chance. So I ended up getting the S2, and honestly, it solved a world of problems for me acoustically in my studio with treatment of the low end of my mixes that I do for my own music and for mixing and mastering for other artists. I know you guys create a lot of different products, which we'll get to and talk to a little bit about. But I want to get to know you, and for the listeners who don't know who you are, or maybe who don't know SUBPAC is, tell us a little bit, how did you get started? Like, what's your experience with music, and how did you end up coming to working with SUBPAC, the company?
Yeah, for sure. So like many of us at SUBPAC, music is a huge part of our lives. And music has been a huge part of my life, growing up. In high school, I got involved with actually learning music theory. I was quite a trumpet player, let me tell you.
Nice.
And then, I slowly got into learning the guitar and sort of got, deeper into music theory and just started, growing this connection with music. And I always listened to music my entire life. It's always been a huge influence on me. And then, so I just kind of kept going down this path. And I eventually found myself in university doing a Bachelor of Arts degree and just felt like something wasn't right. I didn't really care for the direction I was heading in. And, music always being a huge passion of mine, I figured, you know what, I'm going to try and get involved with music. It's what I really love. This is what I want to do with my life. And so I decided to go to school for sound engineering. And I went to a school up in London, Ontario called OIART.
Oh, yeah.
And I went through a 1-year sound engineering program. Cool. And absolutely loved it. So, all this passion that I had for music, I was now applying it into actually, learning skill sets and, really getting a deep understanding of what sound is and how to work with it. So it's absolutely an amazing program.
Yeah.
And then, graduation day finally comes and you're sort of wondering, well, what do I do now? How do I actually get involved with music in the music industry? And, of course, like many of us who went through the program, we had these big dreams of, being the main stage DJ or, being the drummer of a massive, sellout band and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the first mission was just really to get my foot in the door. So what I did is I actually contacted someone in the music industry that had a job that was similar to what I kind of pictured myself doing. And it was a Native Instruments product specialist.
Oh, great.
So, he's a pretty familiar guy in the industry. His name's DJ Endo.
I know that name. I've never met him, but yeah.
No, right? Yeah, like such a smart guy.
Cool.
Friends with a bunch of DJs, big SUBPAC user as well.
Yeah.
I reached out to Mike Henderson as DJ Endo and asked him if I could, start working for him, just for free, just to kind of get my hands wet into some of the things that he was doing. And one of the things that he was doing was tour managing for a bunch of big artists. So he actually sent a bunch of tour managing work my way. And I eventually kind of built that up into actually going on tour with some artists, cool. Which was absolutely fantastic to see that side of the music industry. And, I got into really deep conversations with artists about music production and, how they write music and all that sort of stuff, how they, perform.
Yeah.
And then that kind of, got a little bit intense over the sort of like year and a half, 2 years I was doing it. And even though it was a fantastic experience, I started to think I needed something a little bit more grounded. And so I started to look for other options. And that's when I came across SUBPAC, because they were actually founded, SUBPAC was founded in Toronto, which is where I'm from. Yeah. And it turns out that Mike Henderson had actually done a little bit of promo work with SUBPAC. So he connected me to one of the guys at SUBPAC. We connected, and a couple months later, they hired me on board. And that's how I started at SUBPAC, and I've been there for 3.5 years now. And it's just been an absolutely phenomenal experience.
That's really cool, man. It sounds like you are super well-rounded in a lot of areas. From a musician to a tour manager to doing sales, working with SUBPAC. It sounds like you can do a lot of things. You wear a lot of hats.
I mean, I guess that's what's attractive to a company going through a startup is a company at a startup phase is, someone who can wear many hats and is, pretty adaptable in situations. Yeah. I kind of like to look at it as just, I absolutely love music. So I'll kind of do whatever I can do. Right.
Yeah, no, that's very cool, man. That's great. And it seems like there's a lot going on in Toronto, especially in the electronic music scene too. Can't tell you how many people I've met just in the last month who are like coming out of Toronto, or a lot of well-known DJs. I was at Movement Fest this last weekend.
Oh, Detroit, amazing.
If you're familiar. Yeah. And I swear like half the DJs or people I met there were all from Toronto. It was like a big scene going on there, it seems like. Yeah.
Toronto. We take over Movement Festival.
Yeah, pretty much. It is
so
your festival.
Yeah, I missed it this year, but I think I had a run of 5 years in a row at Movement. That's my favorite music festival that I've ever been to. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's my first year, but it was a great time for sure.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you went. So we've actually done a couple SUBPAC things at Movement Festival in the past. Like we've done their production areas where I forget exactly what they called it, but I think it's called like Behind the Beats. And you can go in and like look at all this production gear and drum machines and MIDI controllers and synths. And we would always display the SUBPAC there and give people demos.
Yes.
So we have a good relationship with that festival.
That's really cool. Well, speaking of all that technical stuff, let's nerd out a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the problems that SUBPAC solves for producers and performers and engineers. Go ahead and just describe to us, I guess, the main product that you use for those types of people producing in the studio. Like what is a SUBPAC for, and how does it solve their problems?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the SUBPAC is a physical audio system, and it's used to feel sound. And, the most interesting thing about the technology is that it's a sound solution, but we remove the air from the equation. So it's direct sound information directly against the body, and the body is acting as the interpreter of the sound instead of your ears. And when you're dealing with low-end bass frequencies, your body actually does much better in interpreting those frequencies than your ears do, especially down in that very subby region, around 20 hertz to 40 hertz.
Right.
So our technology comes in two form factors. We have a seat back, and we also have a wearable. And one's not better than the other. It really comes down to personal preference. We find a lot of music producers in the studio use the seated one because that just kind of makes sense.
Yep, that's what I have.
Yep, but there's a lot of producers out there who also use the wearable. If you want to dance around the studio to your own beats, it's a good way to tell if it's working or not. Sometimes the wearable is a good solution.
Yeah.
So in terms of problems that it solves, when you're looking at producers, engineers, and performers. So I think it would be like a good idea to sort of break it down into the sort of like the path of music, starting from studios and then kind of going into performers, so the performance of music, and then the end consumer. Because SUBPAC kind of plays a role in each of those categories. So when we're dealing with like music production, what we find is a lot of producers experience acoustical issues in their rooms.
Yeah.
So even in the most well-treated rooms, there's still a lot of acoustical issues going on. And I guess what I mean by acoustical issues is something called antinodes and nodes. And that's essentially frequencies are not distributed evenly around your mixing environment. Mm-hmm. And these are traditional, or more traditionally known as standing waves in our community.
Yeah.
Like what sound is just the air vibrating in your room.
Right.
But when you get down into those low frequencies, the bass frequencies, these are the issues that producers generally have the most problems with. It's because those frequencies take so much space to develop. For example, a 20 hertz wave. So 20 hertz is like right down in your subs.
Yep. That
wave takes 56.6 feet to develop. So if you're not working in a room that has the correct dimensions to support that frequency, it's not going to be able to spread itself out evenly around the room.
Yeah.
It's very easy to test this. For everyone listening right now, you can even pause the podcast and go into Ableton and go into settings and run a test tone and go to 40 hertz and turn it up to an exciting level. This is considering if you're using studio monitors. And then so crank up 40 hertz and walk around your room. You're going to experience areas that are very, very, very bassy. And you're going to experience other areas of the room that might not sound like they have any bass at all.
Yep.
And this is all caused by how sound is interacting with the air in your room. And so with SUBPAC, you're removing the air from the equation, and you're putting sound information directly against the person's body, and therefore nothing's really lost in the translation from the sound to how you're interpreting it. It's really about working in mixing environments that are not representing the sound well, and that's really from acoustical issues.
I've had that same problem with myself. Like in my studio, I had a guy named Dennis Foley. He runs the company acousticfields.com, and he is like one of the most brilliant acousticians that I've ever heard of our day. And he actually built out like special cabinets, and they're called acoustic diaphragmatic absorbers for the low end in my studio. And because I live in a duplex, I only have so much room. I can't just start demolishing walls. I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, bedroom producers, have dealt with that struggle of like, my room is too small, my ceiling is too short. And when I got the SUBPAC, to be really honest with you, like I was just blown away because I no longer had to deal with that sound pressure like you were talking about. And like my students, I explained to them, like, if you have your room, which would be like a cup, and then the sound is water, you can only pour so much water into that cup before it overflows. Your cup is only so big.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And so the same thing with sound, right? You can only push so much pressure into a room before it's like a balloon. It's going to pop and it just doesn't sound good.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of producers who are working at home these days. They're working in their apartments. And another huge issue, and not too many people know about this, is something called SBI, and that's speaker boundary interference. And so you don't really want your speakers or your studio monitors to be, close to any walls, because that's going to create almost a doubling of sound pressure in that area. So a lot of the time, what you want to do is you want to move your speakers away from the walls. But say you're working in your bedroom, right? You probably don't have that much space.
Right.
So, again, SUBPAC is another solution, that can really, really help you create that accurate mixing environment. And, even though there's all these acoustical problems that are existing in the room, you're now bypassing them because you have that physical reference of audio directly against your body.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And from a mixing perspective, It has become like a game changer for me personally, and I know so many other producers out there and engineers who say the same. But as far as just the relationship between, for example, your kick drum and your bass, like for side chaining, I can absolutely feel the relationship in the low end in my mixes like I've never been able to before. It's a weird experience or a weird sensation when you're no longer using your ears, but you're actually feeling the mix as much as you're actually hearing it. It's kind of a cool experience, almost like out of body experience, especially when you plug in your headphones. Because I know with the S2, it's Bluetooth, which is really cool. You can take it places. But you can also plug in your headphones or connect it aux to the speakers, which is what I do. And so I can go back and forth in the relationship of listening to my studio monitors versus putting on my headphones. And when you put on headphones, you don't really feel bass, right? Traditionally. Yeah. And so now it's almost kind of like a 360-degree dimension of like, hey, I feel like I'm at the club and I can actually hear and feel the bass at the same time. It's a beautiful world.
Exactly. And you know, we kind of call the SUBPAC a microscope for bass. And, you know, you bring up a great example there where, you know, the SUBPAC really allows you to see what's going on in your low end to that level where, you know, you can really tune your side chains. You can really, you know, time that release exactly how it needs to be. And you're not guessing because you're not using your ears in a poor mixing environment. You're getting that feeling and you're getting a true accurate representation of the bass. And you can really dial in, you know, your attacks, your releases, even on like 808s and all that stuff. So yeah, a microscope for bass is a really great way to describe it.
Yeah. And not only just for the studio, but for live performance. For example, my band Philia, we have a bass player, and our bassist, he's got decent headphones, but he still wants to feel his bass. And sometimes he's not right next to his cab when he's performing. And so I've been talking to him about like, hey, maybe you should check out the M2X, which is the book bag version of what you guys have. You can just throw on his back, and especially as a bass player or a drummer, I've seen drummers in like massive arenas wearing those things. And like when they hit their kick drum, they can feel that kick drum hitting, because it can be a weird sensation for anybody who's performed in large venues to hear the aftermath of bass coming back at them. Which sometimes can be a weird acoustic issue for live performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like, you know, bass monitoring in the studio is a tricky thing, and bass monitoring on stage is also another tricky thing. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of the time the bass players and the drummer, they don't have the best solutions to hear themselves, and they're always trying to feel the subs, right? Mm-hmm. But then you find that, you know, people are competing for subs on stage and all that. And it's been amazing to see people take SUBPAC on stage and monitor with it. And we've even had, you know, bass players from bands come back to us and say, hey, you know what? For the first time in 10 years, I improvised on stage because I trusted my monitoring solution so much.
Yeah.
I relied on it so much that I threw in a couple extra notes to get the crowd going.
That's cool.
And to hear things like that is so amazing. And, you know, for SUBPAC to help these people on stage turn something that's, you know, often stressful for the band into something that they can now have fun with is very, very cool.
Yeah, there's nothing more discouraging than not being able to hear while you're performing on stage.
Exactly.
That is the most uninspiring thing any artist could have. It's just to be playing blind.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, you know, drummers wearing it, not only is it an amazing feeling hitting a kick drum and being able to feel immersed in that kick drum, mm-hmm. but it looks super badass too. You look like you're drumming in the year 3000. It's been a cool look on stage. We just had some artists at Coachella who were performing with it.
Oh yeah.
Billie Eilish.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go on their Instagram account, there's a photo of them using it. In massive stadium.
You should get Meghan Trainor to be a sponsor of some sort, because she's all about that bass. She's all about that bass. Exactly. That should be a good meme for you guys on social media. Just post that.
For sure.
Photoshop her in a SUBPAC.
Absolutely.
It's hilarious. Cool. Okay, so tell us, we've talked a little bit about, you know, the low end solutions and what you guys are doing with the studio and the stage. But I know that you guys are venturing out or have ventured out into other areas of sound, not just in the studio or for producing, but I was, looking around on the website recently and I saw that you guys are also branching out into the automotive industry and cinema and virtual reality. Let's talk about that. That's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of exciting things going on at SUBPAC right now. Automotive is definitely one of those. And we're putting the SUBPAC technology directly into car seats. So we're doing a lot of just, prototype stuff right now. Obviously, official announcements will be made through the website and through our social media platform, once these things are actually available. So just a lot of, testing and R&D right now. Mm-hmm. And, we figured music is most listened to in cars. So let's get this amazing experience and this amazing technology available to people while they're driving their cars, to make that experience more enjoyable and, to maybe, help lower people's stress as they're driving in busy cities. And another really interesting thing that we can do with SUBPAC technology is we can communicate safety alerts to the driver very effectively. Now, there's other safety alerts that already exist in cars, like blind spot, noises, or even visual cues. But when you have something when you have a physical response, when you have something that taps directly into your central nervous system, you almost always respond to it faster and 100% of the time. So it's a much more effective way of communicating safety to drivers.
That's brilliant because I think everybody at some point has been in a car where it starts yelling at you with that annoying beep when you don't buckle your seatbelt. And like having a little subtle vibration on your back would be a much nicer way of being like, hey, put your seatbelt on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without annoying everybody else in the car at the same time.
For sure. Yeah. And then on the VR front, we're announcing a very exciting partnership with a very, very big rhythm-based game called Beat Saber. And they have a game that plays music and all of these objects kind of come at you and you slash them away. It's sort of like the VR version. I mean, I hate to compare it because but it's like a VR version of like Guitar Hero or Rock Band, for example, where like things are coming at you and you're playing along to the rhythm.
Yeah.
And so, having a SUBPAC on while you're in that experience just makes it so much more immersive and enjoyable. And they absolutely love, what we're doing, and we love what they're doing. So it's been a great partnership. So if you ever see that VR game Beat Saber, definitely a SUBPAC around because you won't want to get out of it.
That's very cool. Okay, is it Saver or Saber? Like
Saber, like a lightsaber.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beat Saber. Is that one word or two words? I'll check that out.
It's 2 words.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really fun.
Nice. Yeah, VR it seems like tapping into all kinds of different industries right now. It's amazing. That's cool. Yeah, that's very, very cool. I love the company of what you guys are doing. I think you're solving a lot of problems for people in the studio and on stage, musicians, engineers, producers. I've seen people DJing with it just for the simple fact of just being more inspired when you actually feel that low energy.
Exactly. For sure. Inspiration is a huge part of what we're doing and what we're helping, with people who are working in studios. And I didn't want to miss that part. When you're producing with a SUBPAC on, all the technical things that it helps with aside, you're connecting with your project and your music on a much deeper level. Mm-hmm. And so that just inspires you on a whole new level. And, you might write a bass line that you never really thought that you would write, just strictly because you're feeling it, you're immersed in it.
Yeah.
If you've ever banged around on a drum kit, it's a ton of fun. But when you have a SUBPAC on and you're doing that and your body's in the experience, it's a whole nother level of fun. And, it really, really drives your creativity.
This is true. Now I can speak from personal experience. I 100% agree. And like I said, I'm excited to see more of what you guys are doing in this space. I know that you guys are, in a lot of ways, the pioneers of this kind of low-end book bag backrest kind of sub technology. I think it's very cool. I think it's interesting what you said earlier, that it's not really moving air. It's just kind of like a airless sub of, I'm just fascinated with the technology that goes into it because I don't fully understand it, but I know it works and I love it. It's just this.
Yeah.
For anybody who's never seen one, I definitely encourage you to go to SUBPAC.com and check it out, which is SUBPAC is SUBPAC.com. And before I forget, I want to give a shout out really fast. Live Producers has joined forces with you guys in a sense that if you guys wanted to purchase a SUBPAC, you can save 15% by using the discount code Live Producers. So that's Live Producers. And then just during the checkout, just pop that in, the discount code. You can save 15%. So thanks for making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely worth it. Definitely worth the investment. I love my SUBPAC.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say, like, when I first heard about SUBPAC, my initial reaction was like, what? Like bass monitoring solved? Like how could, like, it sounds too good to be true. Yeah. And I'm not even kidding you. When I tried this thing for the first time, I haven't listened to new music without a SUBPAC since the day I tried SUBPAC. Like this has become an everyday thing for me. Yeah. Whether it be in the studio mixing a project or just, on my emails listening to music. If I don't have the SUBPAC with me, I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah, you feel naked. It's like you get so used to it.
Yeah, you really develop that expectation for an amazing sound experience. And when you don't have it, you're like, oh, like, where's my bass?
Right. I 100% agree. I got rid of my, I had a really nice Focal subwoofer. It was like a 15-inch, and I got rid of it because I was like, it honestly was, I feel like, causing more problems for me when I was referencing in a smaller room with that. And the SUBPAC, I feel like I can dial in much easier.
Absolutely.
And like you said, it doesn't even have to be for people listening, and you're just starting out in music production in Ableton or whatever, even if you don't make music a career and you're like, well, I don't need to drop $300 because I'm not doing this full time. You don't have to. It's just fun. It's just fun to listen to music like that. It's a good time.
Yeah, one of the craziest experiences that I had when I first started using SUBPAC was going and listening to old music for it and picking up on things in the low end that I never even knew were there.
Yeah.
Little pieces of low end information that, you just really couldn't pick up on even a good pair of headphones. Mm-hmm. So, it really, really opens up that low end, and it's just, such an accurate way to experience it. And at the end of the day, bass is the most exciting part of the mix. So you might as well get your bass the best way you can.
Yeah. I mean, we even have like a mainstream genre now that's just called bass music. It's just, that's where we've come to in society. That's a huge part of all the music.
It's all about the bass these days, for sure.
It really is. Thanks, Megan Trainor. No, but one more thing is, when I was playing with new plugins, because I'm constantly demoing and listening to new plugins out there inside Ableton and all these different companies I'm checking out. The SUBPAC has actually helped me kind of realize the difference in certain low end plugins. When I'm sampling a sub bass sound for my mix or for producing, I can actually really feel the representation between the presets that I'm scrolling through, which is also kind of fun and interesting and nice from a music production standpoint.
That's a huge point. And I definitely want to add to that two things: going through sample packs and picking your samples, your low end samples. So not only like, your plugin like preset or whatever, but going through sample packs and deciding like what kicks you want to use, huge with a SUBPAC. Mm-hmm. And if you're a DJ and you're buying a lot of music, I used to DJ, like I barely DJ anymore, but I used to DJ quite a bit in Toronto, and I actually played at some of the biggest clubs in Toronto for a bit.
Cool.
And this happened so many times where I would be absolutely jamming to a track at home, so excited to drop it at the club. I'd get to the club, that time of my set would come around, and I would play the track out, and the low end just wasn't there. Oh. And it's like a completely different track.
That's sad. Yeah.
And it just kind of, and now that I have the SUBPAC and I can feel the music before I'm buying it, I really know if the low end is going to hold up and if it's really going to hit how I want it to hit in the club. And, now I'm not tossing out, music after I buy it because the low end's not there. So another huge reason that I use a SUBPAC.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many applications. I feel like we could go on for weeks.
Yeah.
And talk about like all the different ways you could use it and how it's helpful. I know that we're getting close on time. Thank you, Graham, for coming out and hanging out and joining us today. But I mean, are you still producing much music on your own? I mean, are you DJing, or is there any way people can connect with you with your own music, or how can they stay connected with SUBPAC?
We do have Instagram at SUBPAC, Facebook, following us on social media is huge. We're very active on social media, always connecting with our audience, giving tips, coupons, sales, and all that kind of stuff. I still produce, but, my dreams of releasing an EP on drum code is very far away, probably.
Maybe someday.
But just like, really focusing on SUBPAC right now and getting this, wonderful technology out into the world of production and into the hands of artists and producers all over the world. So that's, where my focus is right now.
Cool. Cool.
But, maybe there'll be some time down the road to get back into DJing and
yeah. Well, if you do get around to that EP, send it to me. I'd love to listen to it. We'll check it out and share it around. Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you, Graham, for hanging out with us today. Go follow SUBPAC, Instagram, all the social media places, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. And like I said, if you are interested in having your very own SUBPAC at home in your studio, or maybe on stage if you play, you can save 15% on SUBPAC. Just go into subpac.com, SUBPAC.com, and use the discount code LiveProducers, and they'll hook you up. So yeah, for sure. And if anyone is listening to this podcast and has a question that comes to mind, you can go directly on our website. We have a live chat running from 10 to 4 Eastern time every day. So hit us up on our website chat. And if the chat's not online, you can email us at info@subpac.com and we'll answer your questions right away. Perfect. That's great. Good customer support. I love it. Thanks, man. Sure. Cool. Well, Graham, it's been a pleasure. Have an awesome rest of your week, and we'll be in touch soon. And everybody go check out SUBPAC if you haven't already. And maybe we'll have you again on the podcast sometime in the future. Amazing. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Had a great time. All right. Me too, man. Have a great week. We'll talk soon. Later, man. For sure. All right. Thanks. Bye. This podcast is brought to you by liveproducersonline.com, a community of Ableton Live users connecting you to the pros to learn today's music production.